Hey everyone, welcome to this weekly Sidereal Astrology forecast for the week of May 19th through the 25th of 2025. All right, so I would say an easier energy to work with this week relatively to your average astrological week. We have some nice aspects and some nice sign changes actually with some planets coming out of perhaps more difficult locations such as with Mars. But anyways, coming into the week, we are going to be in the third quarter moon. This is the action phase of the lunar cycle. It's really where it's really good to put energy into the full moon insights. So the full moon was a week ago, and there's usually insights and new perspectives. And so this early part of the week is absolutely fantastic for implementing them. So a good time for action, taking initiative. We're usually more willing to do it being in the third quarter versus the first quarter, being that we're very seasoned in this lunar month so far. Early in the week on Tuesday, Mars leaves more challenging Cancer for Mars and goes into more expressive and much easier Leo. So Mars is that fiery, assertive, direct energy, and Leo is about self-expression, passion, love, and is also very much about that same fire kind of stuff there. So much more comfortable now coming into this week with a bit of that assertion and proactive side that Mars represents. About the later part of the week, Mercury will go into grounded Taurus, coming out of fiery Aries a little bit, adding to the grounding energy where the sun has already been. Stability, taking things one step at a time, stopping to smell the roses. This has already been the main theme with the sun here, but Mercury is going to be added to that. And around the same time too, Venus will be trining Mars. So we have a good masculine, feminine support here, both internally and externally, which can be great to cultivate around that Wednesday, Thursday time period. And then the week does end with some empowerment with the sun trining Pluto and Mercury going over changing Uranus, maybe some new and different things to be thinking about, communicating, maybe some nice healthy changes in our day-to-day life as well. And this will be essentially closing out the lunar cycle before we start a new lunar cycle early next week. All right, so let's go and take a look at all of this here in more detail when we return. Alrighty, so here's the sky for this week. We're going to look at this for each day of the week, starting first with Monday, May 19th. And as you can see here, we are using the visible sky on this channel, which is very different from mainstream astrology. You won't see mainstream using the visible sky like this because unfortunately, the mainstream astrology deviates from the actual sky. It doesn't actually represent the visible sky. So that's what we're using today, called True Sidereal Astrology. If you're new to this channel, and especially if you notice some of the sign placements are different, such as perhaps me saying that Mercury's entering into Taurus right now, but maybe you've already heard that Mercury's already in Taurus. Things like this, definitely check out the link down below for more information. Okay, so as you can see here, this week is definitely on the easier side of things astrologically. Of course, this all depends on our own personal charts. If we're having challenging squares or challenging energy, of course, if it's personal, that's the most important. But collectively and generally, what we all have access to is definitely on the easier side, as you can see here, with most of the aspects being on the bluer side of things. And then, of course, that Mars going into Leo is much more comfortable placement now for Mars. So our assertiveness and all this being a little bit easier to work with. So that's what we're dealing with coming into the week. We are in the third quarter moon, however, and this is where the sun and moon do square each other. This will be late Monday and early Tuesday. And so squares are about action. They are about challenging ourselves, and they are about really, like I said, putting forward the energies of the full moon, which was a week ago. And so in this sense, we do have some good challenges this week, the early part. Again, during third quarter, we're much more willing to do this because we've been in this lunar cycle for so long. Even though it's a square, it's a much easier square to work with. And again, it deals more with us willing to, take those actions, implement things. So coming into the week, I would say, sort of reflecting on what shifts of perspective have you had over the past week, because that's likely from the full moon, which was in Libra, which is about balance, bringing more balance to our life, bringing more balance to our interpersonal lives as well. But whatever it was, whatever shifts of perspective you recently had, it's an excellent week for starting to implement those and challenging ourselves to implement those this early part of the week. And again, it can be very constructive. We can notice a lot of things starting to manifest, in fact, early this week in that larger context. So by Tuesday, so here on Monday, the moon will be in Capricorn. And so Monday in particular could be good for a little bit of patience, a little bit of discipline, a little bit of perseverance. This is sort of how we can work with that Capricorn. But once we do get to Tuesday, Wednesday, and by this time we're really in that third quarter, we've got Aquarius. So 2 days here, Tuesday, Wednesday, good for thinking outside the box, mixing things up a little bit. And usually with Aquarius, it's accessing more of our visionary side. How can we be a part of things greater than ourselves? All right, so this is perhaps connecting to the world, the future, contributing to things perhaps like our communities, whatever it is there, networking sometimes, but being a part of something greater there and contributing tends to be a great way of working with the moon in Aquarius. So that'll be Tuesday and Wednesday. Probably by the time we get to Wednesday, things will be easing up off of that third quarter, off of that square, off of that challenge of the lunar cycle, and then starting to we'll say complete things, because this week will be a week of completion, as again, we'll have a new moon early next week. But around the same time here, around Tuesday, Wednesday, Mars gets into Leo, closer to Leo than Cancer. We'll probably already notice this shift as early as Monday. But this early part of the week, the shift of the fire energy is much easier to work with. Mars has been in Cancer and went retrograde in Cancer, as far back as late last year, where it perhaps, depending on your personal chart, has been difficult to express that fiery, assertive, masculine energy of Mars. Because Cancer is very different from that. And so Mars in Cancer has been helping us connect more to our feelings, our emotions, our personal life, and accessing what I've been calling the protector energy, protecting for ourselves and others with that fiery side. But anyways, because it's more water, because it's more protective, because it's more bottom of the chart stuff, this is not the most easiest thing for Mars to work with. But anyways, we've got the shift now into Leo, which is much easier. And so for the coming months, we've got the assertive energies in the area of self-expression of Leo, the lion, connecting to the things we're proud of in life, the things we can create. Leo's all about creative self-expression, but not just, hands-on creation or craft creation necessarily. This is about expressing ourselves into things, right? So it could be our hobbies, could be our interests. It could be connecting to the people we love as well, all right? And so a bit of this playfulness, fun, even romance can be quite strong during this kind of transit. So again, Mars is just that one side of ourself that's fiery and direct and assertive, but it's nice to be in this more self-expressive, perhaps playful, creative energy of Leo. And in this case, at the very least, using that fire to express ourselves perhaps more directly, more assertively, and again, towards the things and people that we love. All right, so that's a nice sign change there, corresponding to the early part of the week. Once we do get to the Thursday time, Mercury will leave fiery Aries and get closer into Taurus, where the sun is. And so it's already been, a time to be focusing on stability, taking things one step at a time for at least the past week, stopping to smell the roses, etc. And so now we're getting an extra energy with this, right? Mercury rules how we think about things and how we communicate about things, and really our day-to-day lives in general. So we're getting more earth energy now. And so Taurus is all about cultivating the inner and outer resources. Inner resources like that self-worth, self-value, again, groundedness, steadiness, but also externally as well too. Great time to be maybe bringing in more of the sensual, the physical, the natural energies into our day-to-day lives. So a grounding to the mind, a grounding to the communications, and really good to be thinking and perhaps even communicating in this realm of resources, in this realm of inner and outer resources. And this is going to help really with the new moon, which is going to be in Taurus early next week. But this Thursday time also has Venus trining up to Mars, which is quite supportive. Again, we have Mars, the masculine energy, and Venus is the feminine. And so here we've got a very good support, a very good synergy between these two elements fundamentally within ourselves. We all have a masculine side, we all have a feminine side. And when we have the trine, they're very supportive. So it can be easier to perhaps express ourselves directly, which might be Mars, but at the same time tactfully, which might be Venus, or to assert things, but at the same time to be receptive. And so this balancing, this sort of synergy, this harmony between the yang and yin interpersonal elements of life is absolutely fantastic. So we have that within, but it can manifest externally, which can mean a little bit of support there in our relationships too. Both of these planets are about relationships. And so here, again, that willingness to be direct, assertive, yet at the same time tactful, receptive, and, being willing to connect, essentially, with Venus, can make this an excellent time for those external, interpersonal types of situations there. Okay, so trines tend to be more supportive. They do tend to be energies that we're kind of pushed into, but pushed into in a way that we're usually willing to do it, and things can harmonize a little bit there. But at the end of the day, it's all about setting that healthy intention, and I think here with these two, it's the balance between the interpersonal. And this is really what the whole full moon's been about too with Libra. A lot of it's about this second half of the month. It's really about interpersonal balancing too. So perhaps this can help support some of that full moon energy that we shifted with about a week and a half ago by this Thursday time period. Okay, so that's the main aspect this week, other than the Mercury and Sun here over the weekend. I'll talk about, we have some sextiles, as you can see here. The Sun will be sextiling Saturn and Neptune this week. Really nothing major here, but just a little bit of that groundingness we were talking about, and a little bit of receptivity, again, willing to go with the flow a little bit, probably around that Thursday time period. Okay, now once we do get to Thursday, the moon will shift into Pisces for pretty much the whole rest of the week until we get to Sunday. Now, Pisces is that receptive energy, okay, fundamentally, and we would say perhaps even more spiritually here. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, really good time to really connect to the more subtle energies of life, okay, our intuition, perhaps our receptive side, in the sense that we might feel more drawn to be more present, maybe more connected to our soul, more connected to our unconscious, and really have more of that flow to life. So nothing we're pushed into, but it's just a good part of the month here to incorporate some of that receptive energy. And if you recall, really the past really few months now at this point has already been heavily activating Pisces. Like, for example, we still have Venus in Pisces. We've got Saturn, who's recently entered into here as well. And so there's a lot of this energy that's already been going on. It's dealt a lot with our mental health, our spiritual health, again having more receptivity in life. So perhaps it's a good few days there to reconnect to that aspect of life, to reconnect to that aspect of ourself that is willing to connect to the more soul-guided, the more intuitive, the more receptive qualities of life there. Okay, and Saturday we've got some, again, supportive aspects. The Sun will be trining Pluto. We've got a bit of empowerment. Saturday could be a good day for that self-expression, feeling a little more empowered to express ourselves, willing to face deep things, willing to connect to the deeper aspects of life. So it can be really good for facing fears, inhibitions, expressing ourselves in the face of any wounds, which can all be very healing and very therapeutic when we're setting that intention to do so. So support there, feeling a little empowered, a little direct, more willing to face things. And all in all, typically really good for things like research or the occult, the esoteric or psychology, these kinds of deeper things in general. Now, Mercury will be over Uranus here in Taurus, which can give us a sense of really an innovative mind and mixing up that routine a little bit. So let's say it's a good weekend to think outside the box. We're really starting a whole new chapter with the Mercury-Uranus cycle here. There can be some new seeds, some new things being planted. Now, mind you that the Sun went over Uranus last week, so this could very much be in the context of what's already been going on since last week. If you've been already, thinking about things differently, viewing life outside of the box, and perhaps connecting more to your true self, that part that wants to listen to your excitement, have a little more freedom in life, have a little bit more spontaneity and change and innovation. So anyways, it's already been in effect since the Sun's been over Uranus, but now with Mercury here, a beautiful step in that same direction. And then the weekends with the sun in Aries, really closing out the lunar cycle. This was a Aries lunar cycle, so a lot of it this whole lunar month has dealt a lot with, again, cultivating more of our independence, more of our self-awareness, more about taking healthy initiative. And so anything really about the month in general, really good to start to close out Sunday, Monday, and even into Tuesday. Around late Monday, early Tuesday of next week, we'll have that new moon there in Taurus. All right, everyone. So summarizing here, keeping it very simple, we have a week of easier to work with, collectively easier to work with aspects. But, it's always good to set the intention and still challenge ourselves anyways. In fact, the early part of the week is really good for that challenging of ourselves, being in the third quarter moon, where it is a time of action and implementing things from a week ago, from the perspectives or shifts from the full moon. We've got Mars going into a much more comfortable placement of Leo early in the week around Tuesday, giving us more of that vitality of self-expression, more of that connection to the things and people that we love in life. And when we do get to about the mid-Thursday time period, we have a harmony between the feminine, masculine elements of life, the yin and yang, both internally and perhaps likely externally as well. And then when we do get to the weekend, we have some of that empowerment with the sun trine Pluto, and perhaps some things to continue to have a bit of excitement, change, and spontaneity with Mercury over Uranus. All right, so everyone have a fantastic week. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to click the like button if you're watching this on YouTube, and we're about to go live here for the live stream, and we do have a special guest here today. So do stay tuned for that, but have a great week, everyone, and I'll see you all next time for the next astrology forecast. Take care.